Okay, so today in the Carpartment, we are putting the Rotary back together. It's in bits and pieces, and we have new seals and whatnot to put in it. And so y'all tell a little bit.
Oh, we're actually reusing almost all the hard parts except the oil control rings. All the parts look good. The engine had a water seal failure, so obviously we're replacing all the water seals, all the soft seals. The oil control rings were slightly out of spec, so went ahead and replaced those, but all the rest of the apex seals, side seals, corner seals, everything's being reused. No internal damage on the engine whatsoever after 7 years of running, just a water seal failure.
And so Dan's here because he has way more patience than Brian does.
Yeah, I know.
And he can hold his mouth right and put springs in places that will stay. So anyway, Brian, what did you say? It takes how many hands to build a Rotary?
72?
72. And a lot of patience, apparently. So. It's arts and crafts.
Basically, we only want it in the groove, and then we'll come back with a razor blade and clean up any of my mess. And again, what this does, it acts like a glue that holds in the water seal while we. On this one, it's not so bad because it's always flat like this, right?
Yeah.
So the water seal really can't go anywhere unless it gets hooked by something. But the other one, because one of them is the face is going to be down
Right.
when we're laying it in place.
Oh, it could fall out. If
Yeah, literally could just bloop.
So there are two seals that go in there.
Yeah, there's one on the inside, one on the outside. Yeah, because in a Rotary, the coolant only runs in this area here. Oil is in this area.
Right.
Hopefully nothing's in the other area.
And and nothing is in between the triangle and the rest of the space. Yeah. Our problem in this particular case was water was encroaching on it into our combustion area.
So are you using any kind of special seals, or are all the seals kind of the same? Or
No,
actually using
the
the
water
new-
seals are.
The new seals that Atkins made, they're different material and apparently are a lot tougher. They said that they've actually rebuilt motors and reused the seals, which normally
wow.
these things just like completely disintegrate when you take a motor apart. You
Yeah,
saw
there's
the strings on
the
them.
Mazda one has a little Teflon thing adhered to it that as soon as you use it once, as soon as the heat hits it, that
it disappears?
the
the
Teflon
does?
it separates from the ring when you pull it out. There's no way you could reuse it. But
Yeah.
I guess Atkins has figured out a better way, we're hoping.
So are those seals very expensive?
No,
They were
no.
actually cheaper than the Mazda ones.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, how often do you get something better that's cheaper?
Well, let's hope it stands up to what they say. And so it never dries. Like, okay, why I'm asking is, could you leave that sitting there for overnight and it would still be wet?
Yes.
Interesting. Well, I guess that's great as far as rebuilding goes. You don't have to be in a hurry to try to.
Right. It's not like a silicone that's going to dry out on you or anything. Okay, so this is all cleaned up, ready for seals. So the key here is,
No twists and flat.
and we have
Oh,
a
there is a
twist.
twist. Yeah. You have
So
to have
where-
patience to do this.
so
Is where
where
the
did
key
it
is.
That's
twist?
why Dan does this part.
Yeah, I could see Brian would be cussing like a
Brian
sailor right
loses
now.
shit.
So I got to figure out where it twisted at, right? At some point it flipped. And this one, oh, there it is right there. See it? So this one's a little harder because it doesn't have the face. And what I'm doing here is I'm pushing it to the inner edge so that it can't roll again.
Yeah. And there seems to be a little kink right there where your finger just was.
Yeah, kinda. Well, now the
That's
one thing
where it was
that
rolled
this
up in the
doesn't
package.
have, yeah, the one thing it doesn't have the splice. So on the other one, the Mazda one, it has where the Teflon is spliced together on it, and you want to put that right at the intake hole. It's the coolest spot in the face. But in this particular case, it doesn't have that. So, oh, see, this does have that, like the old one. See it?
The gap.
See where it splices?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you want that in the least hot area, is what you're saying?
Well, yeah. Well, on the outside one, it's not as important. There's no, you've got the whole water jacket between the two. Yeah. So this does have like the Teflon seal, and that was like the stock one had that. It wasn't quite as white as this, white and black like this, but
those separate after the first initial use, basically.
yeah.
So you're basically just going and cleaning where the other seals go, where the
Well,
old
here,
material is.
We put RTV right here.
Oh,
Just a little bead of it. So I'm getting that out. See it?
yep.
Because all this area here is where the oil's at.
Right.
Yeah, that's the top of the oil pan.
Why do you put the RTV in
So
there?
it seals it. Yeah, potentially this could be a spot where oil just would leak out of the.
So you'll reseal it with RTV again?
Yeah. We're cleaning the stuff out from when we did it, and what we'll do is we'll put a little tab, a little blot on here.
Just making a sandwich.
Bitch, make me a sandwich.
I don't think you should talk to Dan like that.
Yeah, there we go. Well, first one down. Mixture of Marvel mystery oil and.
That one got over its stickiness all of a sudden. Yep, you can smell the Marble Mystery oil.
Yeah.
It's like licorice.
Okay, so why are you doing this?
It's pre-lubing, basically, so it doesn't have a dry start up.
Gotcha.
So the Vaseline tear is to hold the parts in place. It acts, like a vacuum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because those things just fall out otherwise.
Yeah. They just kind of flop around.
I have seen that
Yeah.
when you guys were, not assembling, but I guess taking apart before they just fall out.
No, this is the problem. These are PETA. I mean, we're replacing these.
But you don't want to damage the rotor in the process.
Well, you really can't. The rotor's hardened. But they're really tight. They're snug because of this rubber gasket, yeah.
Which we should have some of those too.
So what I'm doing is I'm leaving the springs in it, but these springs are actually funny. They have a little pin that stops the spring from rotating. And both of them are caught in the right place. It's a pain in the ass if you don't leave these springs in here. If you're replacing them, is trying to figure out which spring goes what direction by
Right.
the way that the thing rotates. But we should have some new oil control rings. There they are.
There, the O-rings will be right there.
And these are literally, other than the apex seals, and heck, it may even be more than the apex seals at this point, one of the most expensive parts
Yeah.
in building.
And even with the Mazda discount, it was over $300 for.
Yeah, Brian got these stacked and he held them up and he goes, "This is what $300 looks like." And I was like, "Oh, nice."
They come in pairs.
At least they package them well.
But they're important, right?
Yeah. This is what keeps oil, or keeps the pressure down in the thing,
In the crankcase.
in the crank.
Well,
And there's
no
a,
crankcase.
I was going to say, the sort of crank.
and the measurement on it is this little fine edge right here. So now I need the little O-rings. And what you got to do with these is watch out you don't wind up cutting it, because that
Oh, it's a
lip
sharp edge.
It's very sharp.
has got a very sharp edge. Okay, so once that in, it just pops back in place. So there's a little nick on the back side of it, and that's going to catch that spring, the other edge of it.
I see it.
So it stops rotating and it stays with the rotor. Now here on this one, the problem is you want to make sure you don't pinch that O-ring you just put on there. And actually I'm going to take and help myself just a little bit. Let's do the other side. Clean, 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 clean. Okay. Now we have new oil control rings.
So it's the side seals and,
These are the corner seals going in right now.
yeah, but what all are y'all reusing? The corner seals?
Corner seals, side seals, apex seals.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're going to have, one side's going to be polished shiny.
Mm-hmm.
That was the side that was running outbound. The other side will be kind of a just mottled looking. So we want to make sure
It's the
we
same
put
way.
them in the same
Shiny
spot.
side out.
Yeah, we put them in the same spot, and we're also, you got a little rubber insert.
And there's little rubber inserts that go inside of those that they're replacing.
Thanks. Okay. Now I'm putting the side seal spring in. And I put one corner seal in so that
You don't go into the hole.
yeah, so I'm not, the spring doesn't wind up covering up part of the other,
Oh, I gotcha.
part of the other hole on me. We're gonna do the same thing with the side seals. If you look at them, one's gonna be polished and the other's gonna have little marks from where the spring was rubbing against it. So that tells me the right way to go in. And then I'm gonna slide that in and push it right to that corner seal that I put in there, maybe. If I can get my spring to go down. There we go.
Make sure they're springy and no sticky.
And these, they have a little spot open where the apex seal will go. So what I'm doing is lining them up. You can move them after the fact, which I'll probably have to do. And then coming back to the edges of it with the Vaseline, it's going to use a little vacuum, kind of hold it in place so it's not going to go anywhere. later. So now I can go to number 2 here.
So you do Vaseline before and after? You put it
Yeah, I
in
put,
and then-
well, I put a little bit in here to wedge it. I should have probably put the spring in first. Before I put the Vaseline in, but it just squishes out anyway. But it makes it a little snug. So same thing, I'm pushing that all the way up until I touch my corner seal right there for right now. And then I get my finger stuck under it, my glove stuck under the thing. Now I'm pushing it all the way down to squish the Vaseline out. And then what I'll do is I'll come back and put it against it to create the vacuum. Here we go.
And are you pushing down on it to see that the spring is doing its job? Is that
Yeah,
what you're
making sure
doing?
there's no stick.
Yeah, and then it's moving. You can't feel it, it's a little bit, but I'm just making sure that, like, see my movement in
That
the
it's
spring?
not stuck, basically.
Yeah, yeah. And then we'll hit it with a feeler gauge,
Oh, I got you.
just to make sure. But these are already sized, and we already know by the inside of them that we've got a nice. The insides are all clean inside of the.
No carbon buildup.
Yeah, no carbon buildup or other crap. When you do it right. Somewhere in there, there it is. Hey, it's magnetic. While he's doing that, I can put the other one in the other side. So here what I'm using basically is the Vaseline as a bond to hold it in place. It's like a temporary glue. And Vaseline, as soon as there's any heat, goes turns into just a liquid probably blowing out on the first combustion cycle. So the quantity of it doesn't really hurt. Plus it actually adds as lubricant on the first.
Smoke a little on startup, but
Yeah,
doesn't burn off. Instantly.
burns off really fast, yeah. But that allows us to not have to worry about a side seal falling out of the rotor housing, because now I can turn it over and nothing falls out. Yeah, the apex seals, what we'll do is I'll slide the apex seal in without the springs. We'll put it in place in the housing there, and then I'll slide the springs in behind it and then put the end piece in. Otherwise, you'd wind up having too much tension.
It'd
To
be
get it in there.
It'd be pushing the apex. seals
Gotcha.
out.
Yeah, and I've seen people do different ways where they'll
Rubber band them. And
rubber band them or zip tie around to try to hold them. I mean, it's just easier just to, and they'll clip right in place because, and I'll show you on the bottom apex seal, they're notched, so it pushes in the you put in the small one with the big one, and the small one will catch first on the notch, and the big one will continue on. So there's two springs.
The dude who built these was like over the top as far as,
I'm sure it took several trial and errors.
I mean, this is so intricate.
But compared to pistons, piston motors are a lot simpler.
no valves,
Yeah.
no push rods.
Yeah. I get it, but this is just so against
It's all about springs and pressure.
any of the normal.
Yeah, there's really very few moving parts.
Yeah.
And nothing changes directions, where in a piston engine you have a piston going down and coming back
Right.
up. This is just constant motion.
Just zip it around. So what I gotta look at here is this is my gear side down. That's gonna line up with the front stationary gear. So it's gonna go down in the motor like that, so I need to make sure I put my apex seal in the right direction. Which in this particular case, because I need my corner seal, the one that I can replace up to me. This is my next one right here. So, see part of it's missing. That's the side that I can slide the springs in from, because the corner seal's not in it. There are two-piece apex seals. Mazda at one point was making three-piece. Matter of fact, stock is three-piece. There's one piece that goes in, and then another piece on top of it, and then the corner like this. Those were. Yeah. Well, in those you have to put the springs in ahead of time. But every aftermarket apex seal has gone to a two-piece, and these are 2 millimeter. If you get too much wear in this groove here, you have to switch over to have it machined, and then
2 to 6 thousandths is the solid seal clearance.
ours is going to be a little bit less than that. And then here's my corner. Each one of those has a corner like that. And those I'll put in here.
It's like a little scrap piece of metal.
Yeah. It's just a piece of trash left over
Right.
that we require. Is there any more? Two fits.
You got about 5 dozen.
5 doesn't.
So we usually set them up 2 to 3, I think. We set them up tight.
2 fits. 5 doesn't. Okay, we're still in good shape. Very little wear. Okay.
So you only have to check one.
If that hasn't changed, one side, I checked actually 2 seals is what I just did. I didn't
Okay.
do 3, but if there's nowhere there, it's really not going to be anything else. We're still within where we were when we built it.
The spec is basically 2 to 5.9.
So now it's sitting on the stationary gear. The gear's lined up to the rotor, so it can roll around inside here, but only pressed up against the stationary gear. It's not going anywhere. So now I can put in my side seals. My
Apex.
springs. So when the little one gets in place, it allows the bigger one to continue to slide down in there.
So you have one more rotor housing and one more iron to go there. In the sandwich. That's
Yep.
blingy.
It's what?
Blingy
Blingy.
with the red and the chrome. So apparently Brian numbered all of these, and it's because of the way you torque them all down, because those are all bolt holes. Those were marked from before when they built the engine, but some of them are worn off apparently.
Okay. Locomotive.
They have a mini keg.
Dan wore that shirt so he can match.
The engine.